Okay, welcome to another Jenkins X office hours. Today we've got a demo from Vincent from Dailymotion. So as always, super excited to see what Vincent's been doing. And we're probably going to have a bit of a discussion around some of the things around preparing for GA for Jenkins X3. And as always, an open discussion. Our office hours tend to always have some really good discussions. So yeah, don't hold back. Let's keep that going. Vincent, do you want to kick us off and give us something what you've been up to and show us what you've been doing?
Yeah, of course. So I'm going to talk a bit about observability and yeah, mainly what I've been doing recently with Grafana and integrating the Grafana stack inside Jenkins X. So I'm going to share. I can share my screen. Can you please allow me to share my screen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, try again.
Okay, will be good. Yep. Okay, so yeah, so for the moment, what I did is integrating everything into the Jenkins X version stream. So we have all the default values, well, nice default values for the moment for Grafana, Loki, and Promtail. So Promtail is a component which is used to retrieve the logs from the pods. Loki is the component that will ingest all the logs. Grafana is used to visualize them, and Prometheus too, to collect all the metrics. So there is one pull request. It's here. So I wrote a pull request on the announcement repository with a plan around observability. So there are two topics inside of it, I think. The first one is platform observability. So being able to retrieve the logs and metrics from the different components that compose Jenkins X. So Tekton, Lighthouse, Cert Manager, whatever, or whatever else you might want to install in that cluster, like your own application, for example, of course. And also DevOps-oriented indicators. That's the second part. So I'll talk about it in a few minutes. And yeah, implementation with Grafana, because it's open source. It supports all the big, everything we want, logs, metric, trace, script and go, and so on. So let's do a quick demo. So yeah, for the moment, it's only in the version stream. It's not in the GitOps repository template yet. So what I did is just to write a simple M file in the M file directory, sorry. So we're going to use the JX observability namespace to put all the observability components, so Grafana, Prometheus, and so on. So yeah, I just installed Loki, Promtail, Grafana, as I said, Prometheus, and one more, which is a Grafana dashboard chart. So it's a chart from the Jenkins X project, which is used to package all the Grafana dashboard for Jenkins X. So they are stored in JSON inside dashboard. So we have a lot of, we have a few dashboards for the moment. And one nice feature of Grafana is that it's able to find dashboard in a config map in your cluster. So if you just create a config map with a dashboard stored in JSON format inside of it with a specific label, Grafana will automatically load it. So if people want to contribute to the dashboard, they can just add more dashboard inside this repository, or create their own repository with their own dashboard, and just install it inside the cluster in whichever namespace, and Grafana will just pick up the dashboard. So little demo. So this is a default dashboard I use for Grafana, which has just a few links. And so let's start, for example, with Cert Manager. So I don't have any. So yeah, I just created the cluster this morning, so it won't be very useful. And I don't have any certificates. But yeah, basically you can see the idea is that you can see metrics and logs inside the same dashboard. So for example, CPU and memory, these are metrics collected by Prometheus. And we can see logs coming from Loki and Ponytail. So you can search, you can filter on specific time range and so on. So we have a few other dashboards. Vector and so on. So yeah, we can always improve the dashboard after a while. And one other interesting thing, which is packaged by default, is Prometheus Alert Manager, which is part of the Prometheus stack. And I did set up a few rules. So Prometheus Alert Manager is used to trigger some alerts whenever some metrics has a specific threshold or whatever. So you can define the rules you want. So for example, I just set up 3 rules for Cert Manager, which are the common alerting rules you can find. So for example, the certificate is not ready, or the certificate is about to expire in 21 days. So whenever you have a certificate that is that missed the renewal check, for example, there is some error and the certificate is not renewed automatically, you're going to get an alert. So the first part is that there will be the alert inside Prometheus Alert Manager, and then we need to figure out how people will be able to configure it further to forward the alert, for example, to Slack or PagerDuty or whatever. So Prometheus has a lot of integration with different setup. It can send a webhook or anything. So yeah, for the moment, there is nothing done yet. So people will have to configure it themselves. So I can show you an example of how it works in, let's say, a real cluster. So this is for our own cluster, which is on Jenkins X version 2 still. But you can see when we have certificates that we can see all the certificates and the end date of the certificate. And if I go to the alert manager, I did change. Okay, it's not working anymore. It was working yesterday. Oh, wait, yes. Okay. I redeployed. Okay. Demo effect. Yes, because yesterday to play with it, I changed the rule to put 90 days instead of 21, and we could see all the alerts. But yeah, okay. So no demo, but usually when you're going to have alerts, you can see them here. You can silence them. You get links and details, and it will tell you that certificate is about to expire in 40 days, for example, something like that. So that's pretty nice. So we can set up a lot of alerts from the metrics collected by Prometheus. And so we have a lot of different components in Jenkins X that are exposing Prometheus metrics. So for example, Cert Manager, Tecton, Lighthouse, and so on. So we can set up alerts based on that. And we can also set up alerts based on, do we have an example somewhere? Yes. Ah, yes, the same. Okay, it's in reset too. But yes, you can set up alerts based on a specific Grafana alert based on a specific dashboard. So yeah, I did that yesterday, but I forgot that I shouldn't redeploy. So you can create an alert. You can say, for example, so this is the status of the certificate. So all our certificates are okay, they are ready. But I can say that if, for example, the average, yes, if you want, is above, let's say, 25. So this is a stupid alert because it doesn't make any sense. But if I save that, it's going to be triggered. And the alert, so what's nice is that we have already configured the Prometheus Alert Manager as a default target for the notification in Grafana. So if you follow, that means that if you set up alert in Grafana on whatever graph from whatever data, it's going to send the alert to Alert Manager. And then, because you have configured your Alert Manager to forward that to Slack or whatever, you'll get your alert at the end. So basically, we're going to use, well, we can use Alert Manager as a central point to get all the alerts from the system, whether it comes from Prometheus itself or from Grafana. You can even set up that to get alerting from Loki directly, from Promtail. I think it's Promtail, which has a setup a configuration to set up alerts that will go directly to Alert Manager. So you can see Alert Manager as some kind of central point to collect all the alerts and forward them. And one more thing is the idea is also to see how we can integrate that with kubelc, which is used to run some custom check on the cluster, so that we can get that to Prometheus and to the Alert Manager. So yeah, basically the idea is to get one step further than just visualizing what's happening inside the cluster, so logs and metrics, and also be able to set up alerts so that whenever something is wrong, you can know before someone is going to yell at you. If you have questions, feel free to ask at any point. Because
I've got a quick question.
Yes.
Yeah. By the way, this is all awesome. I love everything you just showed. It's amazing. My one question is about persistence. So you showed at the beginning using JSON in the config map for defining dashboards. And then if you say created an alert like you just did, is that by default stored in a persistent volume in Grafana?
Yes.
Because where I'm kind of pondering is, and this is long term, this is not like in the short term, long term, how can we start to share more? Like a lot of tools like Grafana, you pop them up and you tweak them and you mess around with them and things. And we almost want to, at some point, codify some of that and check it into Git so we can version, you know what I mean? A version alerts.
We do that, by the way. We already do that. Because it's all just JSON. It's you basically export the panel, and it's all in JSON.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I see what you mean. Yeah. So the idea.
So I guess that was I guess my real question was. Yeah. It would be awesome when we get to like a GitOps flow that you can use the UI to do things, and then at some point it creates a pull request somewhere that says, you know, here's what you changed. Do you want to change it? And figure out a simple workflow. I mean, it doesn't have to be kind of crazy, but let people tinker with the UI, and then when they're happy, generate a pull request so that it's upgraded in a library or a Git repository somewhere. And more importantly, then we can share them and we can say, we've got these dashboards and these alerts and whatever. Should we want to put that in a global shared library or or whatever, or a company-wide library or something? It's that feedback loop, the GitOps feedback loop, I guess.
Yes. Totally. You're right. So for the moment, what I'm doing is that I'm doing change through the UI because it's easier, and then you can just generate a JSON model. So I usually copy that and paste it in whatever editor you prefer and push it to Git. But you can also imagine, some automatic workflow, because when you save it in Grafana, it's going to be saved in the persistent volume. So we can also add some, in the Grafana chart, you can configure a custom sidecar that will automatically, do some Git push whenever something changes.
because the Git repo that Vincent showed, the Grafana dashboards, that's actually like that's JSON there.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a good way to kind of like package it up and then ship like we can start making the pull request on those, for example, and then we share these things. Absolutely, yeah. So we've already started building up like a good set of base like panels. And it's a beautiful way to then just get more people just adding in as many panels as, because a lot of the panels out there at the moment they're kind of tied to a lot of specifics I've found. But the good thing is about being opinionated with Jenkins X is, you know if you've got TLS, you've got Cert Manager and various other things, Lighthouse, Tecton. Like we can start getting real opinionated about those charts that you're going to need.
Yeah. So of course the idea is to have some predefined dashboard and so on. And maybe people at some point will want to diverge, so they can just copy the dashboard and rename it and keep some of that change for them. And so we need to see how it goes along the way. But and the good point is that they can have their own internal Git repository with their own dashboard that can be auto-discovered by Grafana.
Yeah, I guess a lot of I mean, this is awesome and I love it and I can't wait to play it, to be honest. But I guess a lot of this is undifferentiated heavy lifting, right? Looking at Tecton, we all probably want the same panels, or we could start with the same panels or share the same panels, and we could diverge and have our own custom panels, which is all cool. But probably any decent panel anybody makes, we probably want to share it most of the time, and have a nice big library of visualizations and stuff that we can share.
Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff that's horizontal, isn't it?
What's also is really one of the cool things I've found as well about these is you can parameterize, you can inject like environment variables, enrich these things as well. So you could say, if I wanted an alert on a pipeline that fails twice, for example, I can customize that, but then somebody else might have different rules. So we could have some nice little UX potentially to kind of just say, have up these different, depending on what rules you have in your organization or your team, then customize them quite easily, still reusing the same charts, panels, I should say.
Yeah. This is awesome. Well done, Vincent.
Good.
That's awesome. I love it. Best demo ever, I think. Best demo.
So you're going to like the second part of the demo. Because that was the first part, like as I said, platform level or system level observability. One other thing we've been working on is DevOps indicator or continuous delivery indicators. So be able to track. At the beginning, we wanted to track like the mean lead time, deployment frequency, mean time to recover, and so on. So we started collecting metrics, and we defined more indicators we wanted to track. And at the same time, there was another group of people since 1 year at work who started to collect health from the team, from the developer and so on, because with COVID and everything, lots of everybody has been remote for 1 year. It's not supposed to be like that, at least for us. But for some people, it's always been like that. But so it was a different way of collecting. It was collecting people health and so on. And recently, I don't know if you've seen, but there was a very interesting article presenting the space framework. So look here from Nicole for Gwen. I think James already read that article, of course, because she's also the author of the Accelerate book, as everybody knows, which is the Bible for Jenkins X, the reference book for Jenkins X. So it's very interesting because it's kind of merging these two topics, like the health of the developer and also the system and metrics. So it's presenting a framework with a space framework. So I think there is, So it stands for satisfaction, performance, activity, communication and collaboration, and efficiency. So I'm going to post the link if you want in Slack after that. Yeah, so the idea in 30 seconds is just to be able to if you want to get a big overview of your team, you shouldn't just ask people how they feel or how they feel the system is working. And you shouldn't only ask the system because sometimes you might not be collecting the right metrics or it's not enough. So you can collect from both and have a good overview. So it can be developer satisfaction, perception of code review, story point, number of pull requests, code review velocity, frequency of deployment, a lot of different metrics you can combine. So you don't have to get all of them. You can get a sample of them. And the idea is to try to get them. So what we started with collecting continuous delivery indicators. So the space framework, just to put in context why I think it's important. So we have a little collector written in Go that is collecting metrics from the Kubernetes cluster using the Kubernetes API. So it's collecting release and so using the Jenkins X CRD, release and pipeline activity and so on. And also collecting events from GitHub or whatever system you're using, because in fact it's a Lighthouse plugin. So you don't have to hook into GitHub or whatever directly. So we're collecting pull request events, the deployment events. Well, that's only for GitHub battle. Little demo. So this is one of the dashboard we've been written. So it's for a specific repository. So we can display, like, for example, the latest release, which release is deployed in staging or production, how many undeployed releases there are, and maybe this is not the best example. So it's an application that is not deploying so often they are released to production. So it's for 2 weeks. So in the last 2 weeks, we can have a look at the activity, number of contributors, of code review, of pull requests. You can see the pull requests, the release, deployment. Yeah, they are deploying like not even 10% of their release to production. So, okay, not very good. But we can see how we can improve. And yeah, so that's the important part of that topic, I think, is to put some light into these metrics so that the team can see what they can improve. And yeah. So we can see that they are releasing quite a lot, like every 8 hours on average, but they are not deploying so often. So maybe it's not. So that's where it's important to correlate that with question to the team directly, because maybe most of the pull requests are for test, for example, so that don't need to deploy that to production or documentation or something like that. Yeah, you can see the pipeline duration for the different context, failure. So there are lots of failure for the integration test, and so on. So, and there is also, I started to write one using the space framework. So trying to put the same metrics, but in the different category, like performance, activity, time to review. Something's wrong. Or they are reviewing really fast. Let's take another one. Yeah. Yeah, so we can get interesting metrics. So yeah, after that, it's just the way we are presenting it. So we need to find the right way to present it. But the good news is that with Grafana, it's very easy. So yeah, one thing I forgot is that in the architecture of the project, so we are collecting all these metrics, storing them in PostgreSQL. So we have just very simple tables, and we're storing like all the raw information, all the raw data, like all the pipeline which are running, status, time, duration of the pipeline, and so on. And after that, just SQL query to retrieve that in Grafana. So you can write whatever SQL query you want. So it's pretty nice. Grafana is a very good system because so it has a backend system which is going to cache your request and optimize and so on. You can change the time range automatically. You get variables that you can set up. You can set up more than one, of course. So it's a very good system to visualize all the metrics you can store somewhere. And one more details about Grafana is that in the same way you can store your dashboard in a JSON file and put them in config map, you can do the same with data source configuration. That means that, for example, our own collector can come with so when you are going with a chart, when you are going to install it in Kubernetes, with a config map that has a Grafana data source configuration to say, okay, I want to add one more data source to Grafana, which is going to be PostgreSQL. And that way Grafana can already directly connect to it. And yeah, so you can, that's pretty nice because you can package an application which is your own data source configuration, dashboard, and everything, and it's going to pop automatically in Grafana. So for the moment, that collector is still internal tool, but I'm in the process of extracting it to make it open source and to publish it in the Jenkins X to the Jenkins X community. So maybe I'm going to change a few things because the deployment for the moment, we are using the GitHub deployment API. But yeah, we need to see because it's only for GitHub and it doesn't work for other systems. But yeah, other than that, it's so that was the second demo about what we can do with Grafana on the observability topic in Jenkins X. And yeah, the goal is to get built-in observability inside Jenkins X so that when you install it, you can see your logs and your metrics from the system, of course, but you can also get dashboard for the health of your repository and your application. And yeah, being able to see, I prefer the other, yeah, be able to see, oh, there's something wrong in that, okay. Oh, it's only 6 hours. Yeah. Yeah, so be able to see what's happening, and yeah, that's pretty nice. That's it. This is the end of the demo for today. So that we still have time to discuss after that.
That's fantastic. You've been busy, Vincent.
Yeah.
Excellent. What's your biggest things, I guess, getting started with Grafana? What would you say for people that are new to Grafana? What would your nuggets of wisdom?
Oh, that depends on what you want to do with it.
So for others just wanting to kick the tires, I guess.
Yeah, click around. Well, that depends. If you get on the system and all the dashboard have already been written, yeah, just click around and see, and yeah. If you want to build new or to improve the dashboard or build new dashboard, have a look at all the dashboard that already exist out there. Grafana has a system to store their dashboard already on their website. So it's.
I have to say the Grafana website is probably one of my favorite websites. The quality they have around documentation and how-to guides and getting started guides, quite envious, to be honest.
Okay, not that one, but yeah, okay, that one. Yeah, so you can find a lot of dashboard. You can search for let's say Cert Manager. Okay. not a big success. Let's say Loki. Okay, and you get Jenkins X, Loki, Cassandra, Grafana. So yeah, I think there are too many dashboards, so it's not easy to find the good one. But for example, there is one I ever used. It's a Loki one, so I forgot which one. I tried a few, but let me find it.
Presumably, for Loki, did you mention in the previous demo that was going to a bucket?
Sorry?
Did you mention on the previous demo that the logs from Loki, or the events from Loki, were going to a bucket so they could survive cluster?
Yes, exactly. So that's the next step, or one further step. It's for the moment, everything is stored in a persistent storage, persistent volume. So that's true for the Prometheus metrics and for the logs from Loki. But Loki can also store the logs in a bucket, so GCS bucket or AWS or whatever. So yes, one more thing to do is to set up Terraform, to configure Terraform to be able to provision a bucket to store the logs there. I think that's nice because mainly for the logs, that's a way to keep them if people want. Or that, but at least it should be configurable.
We mentioned this. We mentioned this on Slack. I was just going to say, we mentioned this on Slack a week or so ago about right now the way we only store logs for pipelines after the pipeline finishes.
Yes,
which is great unless somebody deletes a pod or it's evicted or something. Whereas if we move to Loki to store all logs of everything to buckets, we wouldn't keep losing pipeline logs, when something bad happens, like a pod gets evicted or something. So it might be nice to allow you to use Loki for all logs, and always store them in a bucket.
Yeah, for the moment, Loki is configured to avoid storing. So where is it? It's in Promtail. So I've got an exception. I say that I don't want to store the logs from the Tecton pipeline pods, but yeah, we can easily remove that. And yes, I have a fallback in the build controller, so that if it can find the pod, it can talk to Loki to retrieve the logs. That could be interesting, yes. And I think we lost James.
He's bowled over by amazement. Fantastic stuff, Vincent. Really looking forward to seeing more of this. Great job there. I know that other people are thinking exactly the same. So, and I think it's inevitable. Where we've gone with Jenkins X3 as well. I think having the installation and the upgrade processes and all the other things, concerns we've had have been really, really successful. And the next evolution of that is how do we observe? And it's not just from Jenkins X, it's everything from developing, building software is really going into this. And I think using the open source projects like this, I think that's, and how it's all starting to pull together is quite amazing to see.
Yeah, so one more thing I think I didn't say enough is that, of course, it can be used for your own application. When you're pushing your application, so whether you're deploying to the same cluster, which will be easier because all the stack is already installed, but maybe we can also configure the stack to be installed on the remote cluster too, so that when you deploy to remote cluster, you get. So we need to see whether it's better to get different Grafana and Prometheus and so on, or to get just a Promtail setup and pushing logs to the central cluster. But basically you can get also everything for your application too in the same platform.
Awesome. I checked Go SCM, by the way, and you're right. There's only GitHub and GitHub Enterprise supports the deployment API. But I will say that we recently updated the environment pipeline so that if you are using GitHub or GitHub Enterprise, after you do a deployment, so a promotion to staging of production, we do update the GitHub or GitHub Enterprise deployment statuses. So the data will be in GitHub or GitHub Enterprise for your Prometheus stuff, which is good.
Yeah.
So, well, that should work. It should work.
Good.
Okay, any other questions for Vincent? All right, thank you very much, Vincent. Fantastic stuff.
You're welcome.
Well done. Okay, so before we dive into some of the things we were going to start preparing for V3, the GA, does anybody have anything, any thoughts, any questions, views they wanted to share?
Can't wait for the update.
For the updates for
the GA. Yeah,
right.
We're patiently waiting to click the update button.
I think, yeah, well, we can talk a little bit about that. Then there is a couple of things that I think we were holding off for around, well, one of them is we just want to do some nice upgrade testing because there were some vault changes that went into Terraform. So we want to make sure that the process is called out. If there's any manual steps, I think that some people did bang their head a little bit. So we just want to make that as smooth as possible. And I think we were trying to see if we could squeeze some time to see whether we could make the switch over to CAP. And I don't know, we need to make a call on that fairly soon.
I'm not sure that one. Yeah, we could just make CAP optional. The fallbacks, the issue with CAP is we need to make sure we can migrate to CAP. So for those who don't know, CAP is an alternative to kubectl apply, and it looks really awesome. We've been BDD testing it in parallel for quite a while, and it seems really rock solid. The only issue with CAP is there's a migration process you need to do. That if you install everything with kubectl apply, CAP does things a little bit different, and there's this migration where you need to tell CAP, you now own all the resources that have been installed already, kind of thing. And that's the only bit I'm not sure if we'll get that right or in time. So we might have to delay CAP as an optional thing you could choose to use, and it might not be baked into the GA. So we just need to make that call in the next kind of week or two.
It's a bit of an interesting one.
Everything else is looking great.
Yeah, it's a bit of interesting with the CAP because we kind of, if it's the right thing to use, then we kind of want more. Yeah, the sooner people get onto it, the better, because there's less people have to do the migration, right? But then we want to take migration seriously because that was one of the commitments we made with V3 was we want to make sure that there is an upgrade. And it just so happens that when we went from into the beta, the CAP came along, and it was like it would have been better had we been able to look at CAP during the alpha, where we could have handled a bit more disruption. But maybe we need to, if it's a case of, cards on the table, the options could be that if you want to continue using kubectl apply, if you've already got a V3 beta cluster, you'll continue down that route until you create a new cluster or you do an install and install with CAP. Maybe we can have some nice, I mean, it should just in theory be a switch of a variable in the make file to be able to enable it.
We have a feature flag right now. I mean, that's how we're doing the BDD testing. So we have a feature flag, so anybody is welcome to try CAP. It does just feel a bit too early. Like I'd rather us use CAP ourselves in production for a few months before we make it, standard. So maybe we'll do a 3.1, in a few months' time with CAP enabled. It's just a slight shame because people do get odd issues now and again with. So the big issue that, well, it's not a massive issue, but one issue we've found that is why we started looking at CAP is the Kubernetes ecosystem has gone crazy for admission webhooks and mutating webhooks, which are awesome, but they just make things slightly unpredictable. Like Jenkins X has a mutation webhook, Tecton has a mutation webhook. Those are the big two. Cert Manager has those are the big three. And with all of those, once you register them, if the pod's not running, you can't create a certificate or an ingress or a pipeline. And if you just do kubectl apply to apply some stuff, kubectl barfs if the webhook's not there, which is just annoying, right? Whereas CAP properly orders the apply and waits for all the pods to be up before it, creates an ingress or creates a Tecton pipeline and stuff. So it just kind of sorts things. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was going to say, I apologize. If I'm coming late to this forum, I've just saw the link in the chat room. So I wasn't sure if it was open question or if I just sit back until, and hello. But we actually use, for better or for worse, we use Argo at that point. We've actually used it. So we're just, we have a production environment repo, which is obviously a heavily stripped back repo. And we're just using it as a source of truth for the YAML. And then we've configured Argo to that with a number of exemptions for release CRDs and a couple of other CRDs that it has no concept behind, just to kind of have some sort of, it may be a bit heavyweight there, but for that exact reason you're talking about, the admission hooks. Because Argo, you can visualize and see what's happening in terms of the admission hooks and what's happening there. Is it something where does JX3 have to be opinionated enough that it uses a single tool, or is it something where you're still taking the view where we'll provide this sort of batteries included, but ultimately it's just it's rendered cube YAML, so you can do what you want with it?
That's a great question. When we first started Jenkins X, we figured let's be opinionated because there doesn't seem to be anything at all in any of this space. Now there's a ton of tools in almost every part of the stack you look. There's a bunch of tools there. So even simple things, even before you get to production, are you using Helm? Are you using Helm template? Are you using Customize? How are you using Helm and Customize, or Helm file or not? And then there's kept as well, and then there's cap, and there's a gazillion tools in there. So we've really tried to make it flexible so that you can choose whatever parts you wish. The one big issue, I think, in the whole GitOps space, and it's something that there's various standardizations happening in both in the CNCF and the CDF are both trying to at least start to discuss standards around the GitOps space. For me, the biggest issue is not necessarily what's the image that's running in a cluster somewhere that does kubectl apply, right? Is it cap? Is it Argo? Is it Flux? Is it the JX operator, the Git operator in Jenkins X? Is it Anthos config sync? I mean, there's a million tools in this space, and they're all kind of similar. For me, that's not the really important thing because they're all very similar. The thing that does that last mile, they're all almost the same. For me, the most important thing is the developer UX and what is the source code that's in Git. For me, that's the bit I really care more about. And that's the bit that unfortunately is kind of random. For example, Flux is, here's a folder with some YAML in it, and that's kind of it. Config sync from Google, same. There's a folder, put some YAML there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, brilliant! That's really nice.
How do you trace that back? Exactly. How do
you lay it out? What's the whatever? So the bit that I care with, like I don't personally really care if you're using Argo, Flux, Git operator. If you've got a cron job with kubectl in it, I mean, it doesn't. Really
it works. Yeah, I understand.
What I'm more bothered about is having a standard for what does it look like when it's ready to be deployed. What is the layout of Git? How can we add as much information to that Git? For example, with the Git operator we use, we've gotten slightly opinionated in what does the Git layout look like. So you could, and a few people have said this. Some people have said, I just want to do Helm install. I just want to do Helm install and some charts in there. Which, if you want to do that, crack on. I guess right now with Jenkins X and the Git operator, you could just do Helm install. A bunch of Helm install statements if you want, and crack on. We like doing Helm file template, getting all the YAML, but then we sort it and make a canonical tree. So we know, where the cluster resources go, where the namespace
resource definitions are.
Exactly. And we have a canonical layout that it doesn't even matter what your Helm chart looks like if you're even using Helm. One of the issues with Helm is your Helm chart can use any files of any name. You can put 1 million resources in one file and all that kind of stuff. So we've specifically been very opinionated by what we want the file system to look like. Now, one day, what we would really like is a standard layout that we can try to get more and more tools like Argo and Flux and stuff to adopt. as an optional thing, not like a mandatory thing, because there's lots of people have firm opinions, but just even little things. It's really nice being able to look at Kubernetes, a specific namespace and a specific resource, and go, I know the exact file to look at this in Git, and it's never going to change name. It's never going to randomly move around the directory tree, and I can look at the history of that one resource over time. Whatever tool I use to kubectl apply or to get stuff into this Git repo is less relevant. For me, it's that traceability that's important.
Yeah, I was going to say, because it's the canonical ordering, like you're saying, but there's also these edge cases which we've seen, which is once you start moving into the operator space. Sorry, I apologize if I'm derailing the conversation.
No,
guys.
go for it. It's really interesting.
Where there's these, where we're getting more and more into the operator models, you're finding this situation where kubectl apply is not enough, because you're getting to a place where you're doing kubectl apply to the operator, and then you have some race condition of then applying the custom resource definition, which then creates or starts the operator action, and that CRD isn't recognized until the operator has been applied. So you can't do a straight kubectl apply on a folder. So you see, like a good example is KubeVirt. KubeVirt's a good example where their installation instructions seem straightforward. It's 2 YAML files. But if you look at their homepage, there's a bunch of kubectl wait commands that are in the middle of there to provide some sort of workflow. And so it was just, for like full disclosure, from my point of view, I run a consultancy. And so when I'm looking at JX3, I'm looking at it from the point of view of where are the pluggable surfaces? Where are the ways? Like I really appreciate what the team has done in terms of the Lighthouse, being able to abstract away from Tecton to work with multiple Git repos. I like the new model of moving into the GitOps with the flat YAML, because for me that's the in and the out. That's a good surface to be able to integrate that in a number of different situations internally. The opinions you have, those are your opinions. I caught the very end of the conversation about Loki and using that for log management. So I'm interested to see where that goes. But it's just seeing do you imagine that the JX3 project is getting to a point where it will become opinionated enough across the board, like in terms of the cluster? Because hearing Loki and about Loki suddenly using that installation to do log management for the entire cluster or for the whole development space, not just the build logs, but all logs. And then the talk here about the tooling to use to do deployment. I'm just, again, if this is an appropriate
let me jump in just briefly. Just to be absolutely clear, you can opt in and out of any of this, right? So you can choose to use Loki or not. You can choose to use Loki to capture logs for any namespaces you like or not. It's all defined in Git. So all of these things are completely up to you. So if you don't use Loki and you want to use Stackdriver, Datadog, whatever, crack on. Like use whatever tools you want. Jenkins X isn't opinionated as in we're putting everything in the box and say you have to use this. In V3, literally you define in Git what you want. And that could be nothing, everything, something. And I was just going to explain even more clearly. If you really want to use Argo for your last mile, crack on. Or you want to use Flux, or you want to use Anthos config management for that last mile, that's great, crack on. Even more drastic, we're even looking at, do you want to just miss out Tecton for CI and you want to use GitHub Actions for CI? Well, why don't we support that as well? And the main reason we want to support that is, for some things, GitHub Actions are cooler and more useful, but the big one for us is not many developers have a Kubernetes cluster to hand that is all of it highly available. And most developers just want to try things out. Well, GitHub Actions are always there to try things out on your own, open source stuff. So as a way of trying out the Jenkins X experience, you might never even deploy anything. You might just create a bunch of quick starts, create a couple of Helm charts, and everything's all on GitHub.com. And you don't need a Kubernetes cluster, to at least get a feel for what GitOps feels like and how automated CI/CD works. So TLDR, we should support any last mile tool. We should support any CI tool, whether you want to use Jenkins, GitHub Actions, Tecton, shouldn't really matter that much. The devil's in the details though. It's really hard to take a canonical pipeline in Tecton, it just work in GitHub Actions and just work in Jenkins. So we're looking at ways of supporting that. But the last mile is the easiest bit. The only hard bit is aligning the Git layouts, basically. And I think for most tools like Argo and Flux, I know Flux better than Argo, but certainly for Flux can already use a Jenkins X environment repository because it's a tree of YAML. I know Anthos config management well, and that can use you can use that as a last mile trivially because it's a tree of YAML. I have not tried Argo recently.
What we could
that's
do,
the other thing.
What we could do, because as we're gearing up to the GA for V3, which we're still hoping towards the end of this month, there'll be a lot. I think a lot of the things. I think we've probably made a few decisions of the things not to include. I think let's not go for CAP. I think we could probably confidently say that now, just as we've been using kubectl apply going now. But then after that, once we get to past V3, what would be really good is then to work with you and then have examples of walkthroughs of using Argo CD or different deployment, for the last mile. And I think, showing the extensibility, that's what we really did focus with JX3 was the ability to have these different steps be plugged in, like James was saying, plug in, use whatever observability you want, but have a core part of Jenkins X, but then super extensible, decoupled with architecture, which
what I think would be really good. I know because I've been going through. I've used Jenkins X2, and we've been on JX3 for 2 months now. It was one of the things that came out from that was building that production environment repo, and just I think having a simple example of that would be, I think, really good, because once you start, because it's less about the CD aspects of the dev cluster, because I don't think many people are too worried about that. It is when you start shipping to production, and just having that nice logical separation between where JX finishes and where the rest of the ecosystem starts. I think having a production environment repo available, just it would be really good. And we did it ourselves, which was the systematic stripping back of everything until it broke, put it back.
I've done the same things.
I've been doing the same thing as well. I think for me, there's only 2 things with it. Well, for me, my to-do list between now and GA. Number 1 is let's have a really stripped down production Git repository with virtually nothing in it, like the tiniest possible thing we can get away with. And the main thing we need is BDD test it to test it actually works and keeps working forever. So that's the biggest thing on my to-do list between now and GA. One other thing which is not absolutely critical, but it would just be nice. We've got all the other Git providers BDD tested now. So we've got GitHub Enterprise, Bitbucket Server, and GitLab and Gitea. We just don't have Bitbucket Cloud, and it's so close. So that's not essential. We could go GA without Bitbucket Cloud support, but it would be nice to say all of the main Git providers all work in, all the things we BDD test as well. But yeah, no, we need a cut down production, because I think it's confusing when you look at Jenkins X. Do you think, oh my God, there's all this stuff there, and my production cluster is this other thing? We need to production should be owned by the business. So they should decide exactly what goes in there, which could be nothing. It could be the Git operator, it could be Argo, it could be whatever. I mean, pick your thing, it doesn't really matter.
It's just a sysadmin twitch. It really is. It's like you've got that source of truth. And then when I look at it and I look at all of the other configuration around that, the boilerplate around that, it doesn't feel, I don't know. It is just the sense when I look at it. It's just a twitch. If it's not functional, if it's not, it's the uncertainty of what's in the mix with it. And I think that the beauty of what the pipeline and what's been built and applying it to this sort of pure rendered YAML. There's no opinions, there's no processing that has to happen. That is your source of truth. I feel like that deserves just a clean repo.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only thing that's, like when we start doing an example with, say, Argo or Flux or something, the only thing that's a bit tricky is secrets. So we've been slightly opinionated with the use of external secrets, which has worked out really, really well. Secrets is this kind of nightmare thing that, I mean, I know a lot of people say, oh, use sealed secrets. Sealed secrets are so horrible and horrendous and icky.
Yeah, we use the external secrets as well.
Yeah, and so that's the only thing that, after GA, let's
yeah.
say, and let's say for say 3.1, it would be really quite nice if we could say, hey, plug in Argo as your last mile, and the pipelines do whatever's required to set up a pull request so that you could do Argo with the last mile. The only thing we need to get totally right is, right now, our pipeline, the Git operator pipeline, does external secrets and the kubectl apply. So it's not just there's YAML in Git and we do kubectl apply or cap or whatever. We also make sure all the external secrets are pre-populated if they're not already populated, if they can be pre-populated. And that's the only thing we just need to figure out that side, that to make sure we, any external secrets are pre-populated so that, Argo or Flux or whatever can do the kubectl apply, and all the secrets are there.
Even when we get there, it might be, even for a production workload, even if we could just generate a script of looking at the Git repo, what the secrets might need to be, and just list out the commands so that it goes over to a sysadmin that actually runs the exact commands or enters the exact secret values. I mean, that might even be just an okay stepping stone just to get to that point. I've just noticed we're 2 minutes left of the hour. That was really, again, great conversation, and I always never ceases to amaze me how you can come into these things and not knowing where it's going to go, and then it's just really great discussion. So that was really, really good. I think we're going to have another one in 2 weeks' time, and keep conversation going on Slack channels, and hopefully we're going to have we'll get some news out of where we're getting with V3, and if anybody's able to help with us, then we'd all really appreciate that as well.
If there's anything anybody needs by GA, shout pretty soon, because we're hopefully like a week or two away.
We'll get an issue tracker of things priority-wise for the milestone of GA, and start putting those down, and areas where we could do with some help as well. I mean, one of the things as well is to switch over some of the maybe the version, the quick start Git repos, like the GSM ones and various. So I don't know whether they should go to the LTS version stream, for example, things like that. It's just certain things we probably just need to make a few decisions on. We could get some feedback on as well. But
actually, one thing we need to try and get in there that we haven't done yet is we don't lock down the Terraform module versions in the version stream, which is something that isn't awesome. Never use latest or snapshots.
No.
Reduce health check frequency for the secrets. Okay.
Yes, that's a known issue.
That one.
Hang on, Hervé, is that polling the external secret source?
It's polling. I saw today the number of poll GX made, and
you can configure the polling frequency in the external secret chart.
Okay.
And it's like a standard thing, but we should maybe document it a bit more. That you might want to turn this down. It's external secrets polling the external secret storage to see if there's a new value. Which, are you on Azure, Hervé? Because I know in Azure in particular, it's expensive to keep asking.
Yeah, it cost me about, it's not a lot yet, but it's cost me about 20 euros for only 3 test cluster. So no external calls or anything. So yeah.
So we should turn that right down. It's just a flag, basically, a setting in the community external secret. There is one other that someone else saw. I think it's the dashboard basic auth secret. I think we always generate that every time, which creates a new write.
Yeah, I told you. We had a debate about this a couple of weeks ago, and I'm sure you were saying it's the same.
I know it is always the same value, but I think we still write it, even though it's the same. And we know it's the same value, but we still write it every time, which is just wasting all of our money. So there is a known issue for that.
Could that be some sort of cache for? Right.
Yeah, I mean, we have the secret there, so we know like the value's there already. So we don't. It's what if statement. We need what if statement in a piece of code. So that's
let's get these we're so close, so let's get the last issues down, get them prioritized. So we'll have to make a call. Some things. It's not going to be the last release of the year. It's just we need to make a statement of JX V3, get it out in GA, because still some people are still looking at V2, right? And we know that's not where people should be looking at. So let's pull together and try and get some feedback on some of these issues and get over the last mile. This is fantastic. Vincent, again, thank you so much for the demo. Really great stuff. Thanks everybody for being involved. Great discussions as always. We're so close to V3 and G3, GA and V3. So thanks everyone for up until now and continued support, and let's crack on. Take care. See you in 2 weeks.
See you next time.
Thanks, bye.
Thanks all.
Bye, guys.
Bye.